and welcome to Saturday Stories. This is the program that we started in 2018, and I have been introducing acclaimed and award-winning illustrators since then. Started in person at the Society of Illustrators, the Museum of Illustration in Manhattan on East 63rd Street. And since the pandemic, we tried out doing it in a webinar format, in a virtual format. And it's actually been very exciting because we can introduce you to illustrators from their own studios and from across the country and possibly even in other countries. So here we have this morning acclaimed and multi-award winner and actually silver medalist for this year's original art show, Evan Turk, who's joining us from California. And I'll be introducing him a little bit more in just a moment. I'm going to just talk a bit about the museum and what we have going on. So we have a couple of new shows. We have the Champions of Flight in our dining room, and we have the members show that's going to be in our red gallery on the second floor. And they have a theme that's flourish. So the illustrators who've participated in that show, they've interpreted the word flourish. So that would be very interesting to see that show. And coming on the 27th of October through to the end of the year is our big show for the picture books, the original art show. And this includes over 100 illustrators selected out of many, many. And these are the best of the best for this year's illustrated books. Evan obviously is one of the 4 illustrators who won a medal. And this is an incredibly beautiful book, and it's an incredible theme as well, because it's about an artist who as a young child witnessed injustice, and that spurred him on to tell stories himself through his illustrations relating to all justices around the world, and when he moved to America, how that influenced him. And this book took a lot of research for Evan, and so he's going to tell you all about that, which is very interesting and exciting this morning. We also have well, I wanted to actually tell you a bit more about the original art show if you're not already familiar with it. So this was an art show that started more than 40 years ago by Dilys Evans, who was an artist's representative and art director. So in her world, she knew lots and lots of illustrators. She saw all of their talent. She saw what went into these picture books and what the art really looked like. And she started an art show. And the art show became so successful that it grew and grew and grew. And the Society of Illustrators has hung this show every year for the past 40 years and more, counting. And it is so exciting to see the original art from picture books, because the printed picture looks beautiful in the book, but when you see the actual art that the illustrator has created, you can see the textures and the richness of the color or the design aspect. We have all different mediums. Illustrators use everything from paint to pencil to digital artwork, and it's great to see the variety. There's always amazing themes from all of the writers, whether it's written by a different author, as is the People's Painter. This is written by Cynthia Levinson, and Evan was the illustrator for the book. So it's a team. You know, she sent the editor sent the manuscript to Evan, and then he works out how he wants to do the illustrations. And as it's a picture book, the illustrations are very, very prominent and important in this genre. So the book is about Ben Shahn. Actually, I didn't mention the name, but Evan will be telling you more about him. And then also we have an after-school program that's running, and that's on Wednesdays and Thursdays on a Zoom format, because at the moment all our programs are being virtually presented to you all. So that's been running also through the pandemic. There's an after-school program, there's other illustrated workshops and interviews and panels and sketch night. So we have a lot going on, and that can all be found on the website. Lindsay, who is behind the scenes, as always, is going to be typing into our chat some links for you. She'll type in Evan's website for you. And, you know, if there's anything that comes up when you ask questions, she will definitely help with like directing you towards materials and things that you might need to have a bit more information about. So do not hesitate to be writing in the chat some great questions for Evan this morning. I will be asking on your behalf during the workshop. And also we'd like you to do some artwork and send that in. So if you would be kind enough to send in what you draw this morning, we would love to see it. Evan would love to see that. So we have my email that you can email it to, or you can send it to Evan directly and we'll share. So do that. Don't be shy. We love to see everyone's style. Remember, everybody has a different style, and you're going to get something out of this workshop. The workshop will also go up on our YouTube. It'll be recorded. So if you want to go back to it and go over it again and maybe get your materials out on another day, that's great. We have it up for you also to watch later. Today, this morning, it's totally live. And I wanted to also encourage you all to, just get the book. I think you can also look at Evan's website and see all of the books that he has are amazing books. They tell stories. He's really a storyteller. He loves to do research. He's not just an illustrator, he's also an author. So he's authored several books himself. And actually his very first book that he illustrated was Grandfather Gandhi. And this book came about because he was doing a project at Parsons Art School, which is where he graduated from in New York. And there was an editor there who saw what he was presenting and totally reached out to him there and then to have him look at a manuscript that she had at the publishing house. And so he got the job. First job, still in school, and has been just doing more books ever since on this sort of a genre of storytelling. Very enriching books, very inspiring books. His own book, The Storyteller, actually is one that he did some research for. He went to Morocco and took pictures and made notes and sketched in sketchbooks. And then he created that book and wrote and illustrated it. So I do encourage you to look at, if you don't already know, I know we have a lot of fans of Evan also participating this morning, but I do encourage you to go check out his books. If you have a library that you can go to, you could see them there for sure. This is now available, so you can find that where books are sold. Try to buy them from small bookshops and support the smaller booksellers. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Evan, who comes from a very artistic family, by the way. So we will talk about that more in the workshop, but Evan has always been around art materials and he's put them to very good use. And congratulations on being a medal award winner for the Original Art Show 2021, Evan. And we look forward to this morning's presentation and workshop with you. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Claire, for having me, and the Society of Illustrators and Lindsay behind the scenes. I'm really happy that I used to live in New York up until last year. My husband and I moved right during the pandemic to California. So it's nice that I can be, virtually in New York with all of you. And yeah, I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled about the Original Art Show. I was telling Claire before we started, I was an intern at Penguin Books for Young Readers when I was still in school, and I got to visit the Original Art Show and got to see all of the artwork up close, which was really so inspiring to me too. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be here and to talk with you all about The People's Painter. It was a wonderful project for me to work on. Shahn is one of my favorite all-time artists. So when I got the offer to illustrate this wonderful manuscript by Cynthia Levinson, I didn't even have to read it before I said yes, but I did read it, and it was wonderfully written as well. But it's a topic that's very close to my heart. So I think I'll dive right in and start sharing my screen somewhere. There we go.
Yes, that looks good.
Got it. Okay. So just because there are probably some younger listeners in there, I always like to show this is me when I was, I think in 3rd grade, maybe, with my best friend Alyssa, and I have a very cool shirt on with a 3-dimensional shark. And then this is, I was in love with horses growing up. So this is one of my drawings of a horse that I think my mom still has up on her wall at home. I like the smiley face in the sun too. I used to love to write and illustrate children's books about whatever it was that I was interested in at the time. And this is totally not a ripoff of The Lion King. It's very different. This is the Lion Queen. Instead of Mufasa and Sarabi, we have Ogossip and Barabi. And instead of Simba, we have their son Bimbo. And they all sing the Triangle of Life instead of the Circle of Life. But I went to Parsons in New York, as Claire mentioned. And one of the things that I was introduced to there was the idea of drawing on location. Two teachers, Veronica Lawler and Margaret Hurst, taught me all about drawing on location. So that became a big part of how I approach every project since then. So, you know, I got to travel all over the world. We went up to Mystic Seaport when it was snowing, and, you know, we used to go to Disney World when it was 100 million degrees in the summer and draw the parades. And so that's really a way that I like to approach my artwork now, is through that lens of going somewhere and experiencing the energy of the place and kind of capturing that spontaneity. This is my husband, Chris, and I, back when we used to live in the Hudson Valley. So we're in Riverside, California now. We have two cats. This is Bert and Pika, who you may hear Bert yowling in the distance right now. So he might he might visit at some point. We'll see. I just put these pictures in there because they're adorable, but there they are hugging. And these are the books that I have illustrated so far. So some of them I wrote as well, and some of them I just did the illustrations, but I've gotten the opportunity to work on a lot of wonderful projects. Most recent of which is The People's Painter, which I'm here to talk about today. So it's called How Ben Shahn Fought for Justice with Art. Ben Shahn was an artist who worked primarily during the Depression through the 50s and 60s, and he was an immigrant from Lithuania, a Jewish immigrant, and as Claire mentioned a little bit, his father got into trouble with the Tsar and was exiled, and so he had to go to New York, and so eventually Ben and his family followed, and as he became an artist, social justice became one of the main themes throughout his life. And I've always been a big fan of his artwork. He's one of my favorite artists. And so the chance to kind of dig a little bit more deeply into his artwork for this book was really exciting. And you'll see a lot of, you know, kind of the stylistic things that he does and different motifs and symbols that he uses. And his work will come out in the illustrations. And one of the things that I was really interested in looking at his artwork and trying to figure out what style I wanted to do the book in was how he used shape versus line. And I feel like he had a very unique way of approaching that. And so the workshop that we're going to do at the end, we'll kind of play around with that idea a little bit of, you know, what needs to be a shape, what's a color, and what, you know, how do you introduce line into that a little bit. And also one of the things that I was really interested in working on the book was learning how much letters mattered to him. So he grew up reading Hebrew in Lithuania. And so the letter forms of Hebrew, which you can see there on the right side of the screen, were a big influence in the kind of shapes that he uses in his artwork. And then later on, when he goes to New York, we'll see that he worked for a lithographer and dealt a lot with this whole new written language, the Roman alphabet in the United States. And so he became really inspired by those letter forms. So just seeing how those two different written languages really influenced his art was very exciting for me. So these were some of the early sketches that I did, kind of my proposal for how I would illustrate the book. And you can see kind of that idea of blending shapes and line and trying to capture some of the way that he draws people and faces. And so then throughout the book process, I would do sketches, which you can see over here on the left. Sorry, my bird is yelling there in the distance. The sketch here was kind of my rough sketch for it. And then I would go through and find all of the historical reference that I needed. And sometimes because he did so much reportage illustration throughout his life, I could use a lot of his illustrations as documentation of the places and people that he visited as well. So just kind of looking for the different clothing that people would wear, the way that he drew faces, and also I got to see one of the books had a picture of his actual apartment building that he lived in there, and then translating that into the final illustrations. Here he is working as a lithographer. So you can see all of the different kinds of typography that were being used at that time. They don't know exactly which posters he worked on. They weren't able to tie any back to him, I don't think, but you know, just these kinds of posters that would have been up all around the city. And you can see a little bit of the actual lithographer that he worked with in their studio. So I kind of replicated that over here. He did mention doing a giant sign for hot dogs. So Cynthia wanted to make sure that I included that one in the book. And this was kind of a fun spread to work on because this is talking about him visiting all of the different museums and seeing all the different artists and trying to figure out who he is as an artist. And I thought that was a really relatable moment in the story as an artist, but also something I think is interesting for kids to think about too, is that you don't think of everything on your own, and your art that you make will be a reflection of everything that you're interested in, everything that you allow yourself to explore and play around with. So I thought this was kind of a fun way to show that process. So it's him looking at some of his favorite artists, Rouault and Picasso, George Grosz, Cézanne, Matisse, and Miro, all these people that he looked up to, and kind of seeing himself in all of those people. And then later, as the book progresses, we get to see more of his actual artwork, particularly when it relates to issues of social justice. And so he worked on a lot of murals throughout his life. And so when I was approaching these scenes, I wanted to kind of take that approach as if it was one big mural showing all of these different pieces of illustration that he did. So kind of a montage of all of these different things that he was working on. And the same idea for when he was commissioned by the United States government to, during the Depression, to go and document the poverty that was in the South, because people didn't know about it. And so he was a photographer as well, and he went around taking photos of people that were then later published in newspapers and helped fight for the cause of welfare, to help people who were suffering. And so this is another kind of montage of his travels across the country. And so getting into, I'm not going to read the whole book because the text actually isn't in here, but just kind of going through the illustrations for the book. And right here in the first spread, I kind of wanted to just show him almost drawing his own life. So here he is as a child, just kind of doodling, and you know, the kind of faces that he sometimes draws, and also the dove is a symbol that he used a lot in his artwork. And he grew up with a family of artists. His mother was a potter. His father and grandfather were both wood carvers, so he always had art and craft around his house in Lithuania. And you can see he's there doodling in the Hebrew religious texts. He mentioned doodling in those books. And so you can already start to see a little bit that the shapes of these are influenced by the shapes of the Hebrew letters, which will change when he gets to New York. He fought for justice at an early age. This was an incident at school when he refused to tattle on one of his classmates. So justice was always very important to him, particularly when his father was taken by the authorities. They threw a brick through his window, and his father was taken away, which was a really pivotal moment in his life. He recalls having yelled at the soldiers and guards on his street, down with the Tsar. So he was really, he was always an activist, even at a very young age. And so when the time came for him and his family to go to New York, he actually had to leave his grandfather, which was a very emotional moment for him. But it did mean that he would eventually be reunited with his father in New York. So this was kind of a special spread for me also. It wasn't originally in the book because it's a wordless spread, but it shows their ship arriving at Ellis Island, kind of the chaos and confusion of arriving as an immigrant in New York, and then kind of that magical moment when when they get reunited together. So I really wanted to show that that part of being an immigrant there, which is very similar to my mom's side of the family as well, and how they came to this country. And so then he arrives in New York, and there's all these kind of chaos. There's trains above ground and things that he's never seen before. There's signs in English and in Yiddish. And here the shapes start to reflect the new letters that he's seeing. He talks about having to learn this whole new alphabet, and also how he used drawing as a way to kind of tame the bullies that were making fun of him and wanting to beat him up for being Jewish, not knowing the language. So this is kind of him adjusting to that new life as an immigrant, but art as a way to kind of protect himself, which he would then use his art to protect other people. He was encouraged by some of his teachers to pursue art and calligraphy, but when his father got laid off from his job, his mother said that he had to go and get a job to help support the family. So that's when he started working at the lithographer's shop, which really just gave him a love of letters, and which influenced his art for the rest of his life. He went to art school eventually, and he did not like what his teachers wanted him to paint, which he described as purple fields with purple cows and pastures. And it didn't feel anything like what he saw in real life. You know, he wanted to paint stories of the people that he saw all around him and the immigrants that lived around him. So that's what he wanted to make art about, but his teachers said that wasn't real art. So again, he travels the world and learns about different kinds of art and tries to figure out who he is as an artist. And this spread depicts kind of his breakthrough moment, where he did a series of paintings about a famous trial of Sacco and Vanzetti, who were anarchists who were, he thought, wrongfully executed. And so he did this series of paintings, which was very different from what people were used to seeing in galleries. And it kind of gave him a purpose to be able to talk about these social injustices and the people behind them and their stories. So that's when he began looking for these topics that he thought he could draw more attention to, and use his art as a way to help these stories reach more people. So he talked a lot about prison reform, the plight of Jewish immigrants, and workers' rights were all things that was very important to him, were very important to him. Traveled around the country. You can see his companion at the time. I feel like I made her look a little angry. She's sitting there waiting for him to take all these photos, but they traveled all around the country together. And later in his life, he was actually able to do one of his first murals was a mural in the Jersey homesteads in New Jersey, which was a Jewish community that they had built. And he did a mural that showed essentially his history, the history of Jewish immigrants in the United States. So it showed the arrival at Ellis Island, all of the people coming together, including Albert Einstein, which he included in the painting, working at the garment factories, unionizing and fighting for better conditions in the workforce. And really he got to tell his own story as a Jewish immigrant in the United States. Which his political leanings often got him antagonized by the US government as well. They thought he was stirring up trouble, which probably wasn't incorrect, but he was very passionate about what he believed in, and so he kept making the kind of art that he thought would make change. So throughout his life, he would continue to do so. Some of his more famous portraits I included in this one, Martin Luther King, and a little cameo from Gandhi, who my first book was about. And then again, that symbol of the dove coming back, where he's using his artwork as a way to protect other people and to fight for the cause of peace. And at the end here, the Hebrew text says, Lador Vador, which means from generation to generation, which was Cynthia's suggestion. And it shows him teaching one of his grandchildren how to draw. And again, she's drawing the dove. So kind of coming full circle, and how the legacy of his art is inspiring other people to use their art to tell these kinds of stories and to make, hopefully make the world a better place. So that is the People's Painter. Stop sharing real quick.
That was amazing. Wow. Awesome.
All right, and now we can get started with making some artwork. So hopefully you all have some materials with you. Let me get my other camera set up.
Yes, and don't forget, I know that was very important that you all were focusing on watching that slide presentation and listening to Evan talk about the People's Painter and how he went about illustrating it and the story of Shahn. So now you can think about questions as we go through the workshop. Maybe some things came to mind while you were looking at Evan's magnificent artwork. He really is an incredible artist, beautiful artwork. And you will be able to see one of the illustrations from the book in the original art show. So, you know, if you do get a chance or you live in the area, you can go to the museum and see the artwork in person, which is really wonderful.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so today the process that I'm going to show you a little bit was one that I used a lot in the illustrations, and it's kind of dealing with this idea of layers and of shape versus line, which is something that I think that Shahn was incredible at doing. So I really wanted that to come through in the illustrations. And so depending on what materials you have, you should be able to do this. Let's see, a little more light on my paper there. For the book, I used gouache, which is a type of opaque watercolor, which means that you can, if you dilute it with a lot of water, it can be very translucent, like regular watercolor. But if you use it very thickly, it can be opaque, and you can kind of layer it over the top of other things. So the first step that I'm going to do is, I have my very messy palette here. I'm just going to lay down some color. So I'm going to choose this orangey color. Maybe I'll throw a little yellow in there too. And I'm going to kind of do two simultaneously, one with the gouache and one with colored pencils, for those of you that don't have.
Your palette looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you. This is actually the palette for a different book that I just finished. So it's different colors than the Shahn book. But I'll just take some of that, take a little water, and I'm just going to kind of smush some color around here. And you don't have to be too precise with anything. I'm only going to do it on about half of my paper, since the other side's going to be for dry mediums. Let's see, maybe I'll throw a little red on there too. So this will kind of be the background that we can then work on top of.
Yeah, so kids, if you don't have paints with you, you can be doing this with your pencils. You can just create colors, mix,
Yeah, so I'll show that now too, while I'm waiting for this to dry. Usually I'd use a hairdryer, and I might at some point if it's not drying, but also that sounds horrible over this audio. So I might very quickly use the hairdryer.
You can.
Yeah.
It's quicker, I know. So Evan is doing a wet demonstration and a dry demonstration for you all to see the difference, but you can still create the textures that he's achieving for the backgrounds. So you do have some nice comments already, how amazing and inspiring, beautiful the book is. We have Kristen and Dahlia, and also Alexander, who's sending you love from Atlanta. Do you know
Hi,
Alexander Chalmer? Yeah. Hi, Alexander. And Dana and Toma, Thanks for joining. You guys are going to really enjoy doing this artwork this morning. Can't wait to see what you do, so send it in. That goes for all of our participants this morning. We really love to see what you do.
Here I'm just kind of scribbling with some colored pencils. And then I'm also going to use, I've got these, I just got a new set, so they're very clean.
Well, exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Materials.
These are water soluble crayons, but you can use regular crayons too. Just the ones I have nearby, but just kind of laying down some color. Doesn't really matter what at this point. Yeah, put some pink in there.
So we definitely have folks joining us from all over the States this morning, which is wonderful.
All right, so we've got the wet and the dry. I am gonna use the blow dryer very briefly just to make sure this is dry, so bear with me, everyone.
Yeah, it's the process, everybody. You might need to use your own hairdryer to dry your paint. So good to see how Evan's using all the tools that he uses for his real artwork. He's showing you everything, all his secrets.
Yes. Let me just grab. So the next step is kind of a process of masking different shapes. So I'll use masking tape, appropriately named.
Yes.
And the reason I wanted to use this when I was working on the illustrations is Shahn always has really crisp lines between things, and his work almost looks like it's made of collage. So like it looks like there's lots of different layers put together. It's not actually, but I wanted to get that same kind of effect. So I used masking tape to do that. So here, let's see, I think I'm gonna do I think on this side, I'm gonna do a face. So we'll try that over here. So what I'm gonna do is I tore this off very poorly, but I'm just going to kind of pick a shape for what I want this face to be like. And one of the nice things about this is it doesn't have to be super exact. And I think that kind of lets it be a little bit more spontaneous, which also Shahn's artwork has a lot of spontaneity to it. I think that's part of the reason that I enjoy it so much, is that it has so much life in it.
Life in it, yeah, absolutely. Just so that some of our younger viewers can understand the difference between using a masking tape and perhaps some other type of tape. You would say that you use that because it peels off without ripping up the paper.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it does also still. But, the masking tape is the masking tape is good as opposed to like Scotch tape, because if you're using Scotch tape, the water will kind of bead up on it, so it make it kind of messy too.
Right.
So I made one shape here, and then on this other side, for those of you using wet media, get myself together here. One thing that I did a lot in the book was I actually cut the masking tape into very thin strips using a matte knife. So obviously only with an adult should you be cutting anything with a knife. But this I thought was a really great way to kind of get a little bit more precision with the shapes. So I think on this side I'm going to do a dove. So I'm just kind of making a little bit of an outline. So on this side, I kind of blocked out a shape and I'm going to paint around it. And on this one, I'm actually going to kind of use some of the tape as lines. Maybe some of it I'll use as shapes too, but just kind of playing around. And again, the fact that you can kind of draw with the tape means that you don't have to worry about if it's perfect, because you're really just kind of going for, where's my tape? the general feeling of it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And that actually everybody, you know, masking tape is what painters use to paint, you know, the walls in a home. And so it's perfect for using for your art if you're using paint. As Evan said, it'll withstand the liquid going on top of it, the wet.
Right. So you'll see why that's important in just a second.
It's a little bit like sculpting, sculpting with masking tape.
Yeah, it's fun because I mean, you can really figure out, like a sculptor, you know, you're kind of working from the outside shapes in, and then adding in the details. So you can really, yeah, that's a great way to put it, is you're kind of thinking a little bit like a sculptor, and how they might.
So is this a technique that you've developed for this particular book, or something you've used often? I'm getting a question in.
So this particular technique was for this book, but I've used kind of similar techniques in some other books. So like for Muddy, the story of blues legend Muddy Waters, for that book, I made stencils. So I would do one version of the drawing and then cut it into a bunch of different shapes, which then I could use to block off certain areas to fill in with oil pastel on top of a watercolor background. But I always like working in layers like this, just because I think it helps to, you know, give it a complex feel where you can be deliberate, but you can also kind of play around and have fun.
Yes, it looks really fun. Hope you're all having a little go if you can at home. And we have Caitlin from Minnesota, hi. And we have Michelle, who's from, I'm not sure where she's from actually. I thought she said London, but her name is Michelle London. So I almost thought it was London. Jan is saying beautiful summary that you gave for the book. She really loved that. And she says, thank you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And someone's from, oh, Michelle's from Brooklyn. Yeah. Didn't you used to live in Brooklyn a little bit, or no, that wasn't?
I lived in Queens, actually.
Oh, you were in Queens. That's right, yeah. Oh, not far.
So the next step that I'm going to do here, over here on the dry side, is I'm just going to use a different color. And because on that one, I was kind of scribbling vertically, so now I think I'm going to scribble horizontally. And I'm going right over the masking tape. And so there'll be a reveal once that's done. And I just kind of want to make sure there's a big color difference between the outside of the masking tape and the inside. So I might actually, that didn't take too much. I'm going to use a crayon. Just kind of make sure you can see where it's crossing over the tape there.
Wow, this is very exciting, Evan. I decided to get my paints out. I won't be distracted too much, everybody. But, oh my gosh, this is making me want to do some art.
Well, I think that's one of the things I like about illustration too, is you always find the ways that make you enjoy it, and usually that comes through.
Yes, absolutely. And,
all right, so let's see. So that's on the dry side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off the tape, and we'll see how we did.
Ah, look at that, yes.
Now we've got a nice crisp shape for the person's head.
Yeah.
So then what I kind of did in the book was I would use this as a loose kind of guideline of where to put everything. But the lines, I kind of just put them where I wanted, what felt right to me. So it didn't necessarily have to line up exactly with the shape that I made. So maybe I'll start. So now I'm just taking a black crayon, and maybe I'll some curly hair. And you can kind of use those shapes as a guideline, but you don't have to, you know, draw straight in the lines. Because that's something that I think I noticed a lot with Ben Shahn's artwork, was that he usually would choose whether something had an outline or whether it was a shape. So he wouldn't necessarily outline something that he had already given a shape with color.
Right.
So he kind of, I think that kind of overlapping quality gave it, again, that spontaneity and kind of that feeling of movement. So like the outlines didn't stay exactly where the shapes were.
Perhaps, you know, I think our participants are very busy creating art. If you have a moment to, you know, pop a question in, do, but I'm going to ask Evan lots of questions because I've got lots of questions. So, you know, you mentioned that Ben Shahn's family were artistic family that did woodwork and sculpture. And you also have an artistic family who go through the generations, not just, you know, your mother, but also your grandmother and your grandfather. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about what it was like to be Evan Turk as a young child.
Yeah, I mean, there was always, and I'll just talk as I'm doing this too. So now I'm gonna pick a different color and kind of do a similar thing with the gouache over here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my dad is artistic too. He was an architect. My mom was an interior designer, and then she worked as a muralist. So when we were growing up, she would always be working on these enormous murals at restaurants around Denver. And then later, she was an elementary school art teacher for 20 years. So there was always art around me growing up. And then my grandmother, who I actually dedicated this book to, Lenore Dove Kadish, so all the doves I said were drawn for her. She actually just passed away about a week ago, so I don't want to start crying on camera, but she was a very special person to me, and she was a brilliant artist. She, at the age of 14, she lived in Brooklyn, just like Ben did. She got on the subway and decided she wanted to get a job as a fashion illustrator, and she worked as a fashion illustrator for most of her life. And then my grandfather was a physicist, and then when he retired, he became a sculptor. And that's kind of what he devoted the last, I don't know, 25, 30 years of his life to was sculpture, which I always found so inspiring.
Yes, it's never too late to incorporate art into your life.
Exactly.
We all have actually avenues that are creative, whether it's through art, sculpture, making things, you know, music, dance. It's just such a great part of everyone's life to incorporate some form of activity.
Now you can see I'm just kind of filling in around that tape. And again, trying to get that high contrast so that when I take the tape off, there's really a big distinction.
Fantastic to watch the layering. I'm at the stage where I'm waiting for my paint to dry. I don't have a hairdryer.
Now you see why I use the hairdryer. I don't have a lot of patience, but.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. Well, that's why, you know, if you're an oil painter, that does take, you have to have patience with that paint because it takes days to dry.
Yes, yeah, I paint with acrylics because again, I don't have a ton of patience.
Yeah.
So again, you can just kind of, what's nice about the using this masking is that you can really play around and not worry too much about what's going where, because you have that tape to kind of still give you that outline once you pull it off. So you still have your structure underneath, kind of.
So yeah, you can get these small rolls of tape too, actually. You know, there's a whole.
Well, that would have been smart.
Although, you know, wabi tape, I guess it's called. I might not be pronouncing that right, but there's a whole, you know, yeah. I just realized that there's smaller rolls of tape too, but I like, as you said, actually, to your point, you know, you can be looser with it if you're just ripping the masking tape into strips and sort of seeing what shapes get created from playing with it, rather than worrying about being too precise. Like maybe a stencil would be more precise. Oh, I think we have a question. Let me have a look. Oh, from Boston. This is wonderful. Thanks, Colleen. Oh, so somebody, Kristen just asked, have you done any mural work like your mother? Ooh, that's a good question. Thanks, Kristen.
I did one that I think the restaurant is still open. It was at a restaurant in Astoria in Queens called the Dog House, and I did kind of a abstract mural of Astoria. So it had, you know, buildings and the subway system, kind of Stuart Davis-like. I think the restaurant is still open. So if you're in Astoria, you can go and check out the Dog House and see my mural there. I'd love to do more too.
Very exciting. I'm going to do that. Hey, Evan, we have our first piece of artwork emailed into me. Toma, this looks amazing. I knew you'd be loving this workshop. This is right up your alley. So Toma is almost 10 and he is an amazing illustrator. He does a lot of my after school classes and I've seen him at many, almost all of our Saturday stories. Him and his sister, they come to the Saturday stories and they've been just developing their own styles completely. Anyway, we will be posting a little bit of this artwork on our Society of Illustrators Instagram. I'll be sending this illustration to you.
Great. I'm going to turn on the hairdryer again real quickly. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice, that wasn't too long. Donna wants to know what type of brush you're using. Thanks,
I don't
Donna.
actually know what kind of this is. I got it at
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
There's a Japanese bookstore on Bryant Park in New York called Kinokuniya. So that's where I got this. I don't know what, it doesn't have like a name on here.
Yes, that's a great.
Oh, it might, but it's worn off. But they're just general watercolor brushes.
Yeah, but the bristles are quite soft, are they, on that one?
They are, yeah. So now I'm just going to start taking, the bookstore is Kinokuniya.
Okay, so Lindsay will find that and put that in the chat, everybody. She's really great behind the scenes. Thanks, Lindsay. She'll research it for us. I know that bookstore, though, because I've been there many times myself.
So now I'm just taking off all of my tape. I ripped it a little bit there, but you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I guess paint over it if it rips a bit, because it's part of the texture. And yeah, that's what I love about the style of artwork that you create. It's very it's sort of relaxing in a way, because you're not having to be too precise. You're just seeing how things work. It's like sculpting on paper, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was something I learned kind of early on with children's books, is that the more I could make it so that I wasn't freaking out if I made a tiny mistake. So kind of setting myself up for success in that way, where I can kind of paint over something if I need to, or
yeah, and you have so much. It's interesting because the style is layered, but the stories are layered. So there's a lot of information going into your spreads. You know, you've got so much to look at. That it's a nice way to sort of loosen it up a bit, because otherwise you could get wrapped up in painting, you know, drawing a building, but you're suggesting buildings. We know that, you know, what they are. And yes, everybody, you did see, didn't you, how much research Evan does? I'm always stressing to, you know, young illustrators, do not worry about looking at things and trying to copy them, because that's how you get better and you use your own eye to look at things, and then you will develop your own style. So, you know, really, Evan has his own style, but he was inspired by Ben Shahn's style. And, you know, it's his own way of doing it, but he was inspired by his work. That if you put their work side by side, you could see inspiration, but they're not the same. So, you know, use your research for inspiration. I recommend it.
So now I'm just going to kind of do the same thing that I did on the dry side, and just kind of go and add details on top of the shapes that I laid down. And again, not worrying too much about fitting in the lines or anything like that. So use a little crayon here, put some feathers in. And again, kind of not worrying about the shapes, I think gives it a lot more movement and a lot more motion. And then I'm going to use this little brush. I put some black gouache out here. I can just start to add in a few of those details.
Yeah, and experimenting with different size brushes. Look how Evan is doing that very, almost like he's using a pen. So quite a fine brush.
Yeah, and Shahn had he used a lot of different types of materials as well. And he had kind of a unique line where it was almost like stuttery, the way that he would paint his lines. So it almost had kind of a nervous energy to it a little bit, but I love that.
Yes, energy. Yeah, that's a good word to describe it. Yeah. So this is, maybe you'll understand. Hang on, where did I see that? That's quite funny. So Leah Wilcox says, I love your art. Chicken nugget. Does that mean anything to you? Chicken nugget?
It's not. But I love chicken nuggets, so.
You love chicken. Somebody knows that about you.
I guess, yeah.
Leah, give us a little bit more information about chicken nugget. Yeah, that looks amazing. I love that.
And then I think we still got a few minutes, so, right?
Oh yes, actually we got about half an hour. So
okay.
Yeah, you're working too fast.
I am working too fast. I didn't think I was going so fast. Well,
we have more to talk about. You have a lot of books that are really fascinating. So of course, this is the latest book. The artwork, as I said, is in our original art show for 2021. Definitely check that out. But let's talk about some of your other books, and maybe you can also show, some style. Maybe what are you working on right now, even?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think these are done. So you can keep adding layers to them.
Oh my gosh, they're so fantastic. Yeah, love that.
Keep adding on top, which is also great because when you mask it out like that, you can see those different layers. So
you've got the wet that you just saw, and then you've got the dry. Can you move it into the screen? Yeah, there you see the difference, but they're still really effective. Very fun. So if you had crayons, if you had pencils, pastels, any kind of paint that you have, you can play around with both techniques.
Yeah.
And masking tape, yeah, great. I haven't got, I need some more materials around me. I wasn't planning started it, everybody.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I actually just sent off the artwork for my newest book, but I have one that I had not finished yet, so I can show you that piece. So this this will actually be the case cover. So when you take off the jacket for the book, this will be underneath.
Beautiful.
But this book is called Hello Moon. So I wrote and illustrated this one, and it's about a parent and child who go out every night to see the different phases of the moon, and the parent teaches their child about the beauty of the new moon, which is when the moon is almost, it looks like it's disappeared, but you can go out and see millions of stars in the Milky Way. And so it's kind of a reminder of how much light is always around you, even if you can't always see it. So that is for Hello Moon. Someone's asking, how did I do the layers?
Yes, it looks like marble.
So for this book, it was a lot of fun. I used marbling inks to marble the paper beforehand. So I think they're an oil-based ink. So you set up like a tray. I used a baking sheet, and then you fill it with a little bit of water, and you kind of drop these little inks, and they float on the surface. So then you swirl them. I swirl them with like a skewer to give it these different patterns. And so this one, I think I was using 2 different blues and black, and then I used gouache to go over the top of it to kind of unify all those different colors. And then I used a similar technique to what I did in the Shahn book to kind of paint on top of the marbled paper. So it kind of gave it that cosmic feeling.
Amazing. I love it. That's such a great technique. But did you how quickly did you come up with that concept?
This book?
Well, yes, the whole thing is amazing. That whole.
this book kind of changed a lot over a couple years. I knew that I wanted to do something around that idea of how many stars you see when the moon is dark, but I wasn't quite sure how to tackle it. And then it started to come together actually when my nephew was born, and kind of this idea of explaining what a new moon is to a child. And also he didn't even know about the book, but he became obsessed with the moon. And even he's about 2.5 now. His name is Graham. And he knew all the names of the phases of the moon. I don't think he knew what the phases were, but he could say like, that's a gibbous moon, or, all these adorable things. So he became obsessed with the moon, which made it perfect.
Oh, yes.
Working on it. So this is,
Is that's him?
Theoretically. Yeah, exactly. I'm from Colorado, and my brother and sister-in-law and nephew all live in the mountains in Colorado. So this book takes place there in Buena Vista, where they are.
Like snowy. Yeah, and Jan just said she loves the footprints. Yes, those are great.
Yeah, exactly. Now that I'm in California, we don't really have winter anymore. We can see winter in the mountains, but
you can go to Mount Baldy or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, hang on. Someone's got a good question. Let me go in here, Kristen. Do you ever create a book and run out of pages? You cover end pages. How do you tackle that challenge?
That's a good question, actually. I think what I've learned to do as I've been illustrating more books is I kind of just come up with a pagination. So I actually have the one for Ben Shahn over here. Which,
yes, excellent.
So a pagination from the word page is kind of a map of the book, like a bird's eye view. And I plan out each one of the spreads and what's going on. So I'll do a lot of thumbnails that are just, little sketches, and then I'll go through and do one in color to try and figure out how the colors are going to help tell the story.
Right.
As well. And so usually what I'll do is I'll just kind of do my pagination, do my sketches, and send it into the art director and the editor, and they help me figure out how it's going to fit into a page count, because it has to be in multiples of 8 because of the way that books are created. So, it'd be 30, no, not thinking of any numbers that are actually multiples of 8, but 36. I'm on the spot. Math is not my strong suit. So whatever the number would be, sometimes you'd have to add another 8 pages if you go over slightly. So we just kind of figure out how to work in the end papers and the front and back matter after that. So that's usually how I would kind of approach that process, is use as many pages as you need to tell the story, and then figure out how it fits into the printing process after.
And
that.
I think there is a format, isn't there? I think it's maybe 32 pages is like the more
32,
standard.
that's the number I was looking at.
I didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, 32 pages I think is the standard, but they can do increments up, as you were saying, increments of 8. See what the time is right now. Sometimes we have requests from the audience who might want you to do something in particular. So if anybody has maybe an animal or something that they would like to see Evan draw right in front of your very eyes, we do have a few more minutes, like 20 minutes. So let's see what we have. Oh, Jan says hands. Can you comment on hands? Yes, hands are quite tricky to draw, but you can do them in different ways.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I can show a little bit to.
Oh, Malcolm. Hi, Malcolm. Malcolm would like a red panda. We've got a lot coming in. We might
I've learned that I never know so little what an animal looks like until somebody asks me to draw it on the spot. It's like all of my memories of any animal go right out the window.
Yeah, it's like a red panda.
Well, I'll start with hands, I guess.
Yeah, hands. We'll start with
Ben Shahn had so this is one of the pieces from the book. He had a very unique way of drawing hands, and it was kind of fun to play around with that idea. He usually kind of abstracted the hands in a little bit to really focus on what the gesture the hand was.
Yes,
So
the texture. Mm-hmm.
that's what I tried to do with the illustrations as well. This was a fun one because it was all of these different artistic techniques to figure out the proper way to hold the hands. My husband and I both do, I haven't done it in a while, but he is actually a ceramicist. And so we both know how to throw on the wheel. So it was fun to kind of include this little homage there because his mother was a potter. And again, the way that he kind of drew hands, for me, it was always about making sure that, because when you think of different hand positions, each finger is always doing something different. It's going in a different direction, but there's kind of like a general gesture to it. So, sometimes I would think about, if someone was holding something, how many fingers do we have there? 5.
Yeah, that's 3. One more.
Really it's more about the shapes and the gesture of it. And again, a lot of the influence, for me at least, I saw of his typography and kind of the shapes of Hebrew letters. I saw a lot in the way that he drew people and that he drew hands. So it'd be kind of these overarching, exaggerated shapes that really help get the gesture across. And like let's see, I'm looking over at my wood carving one. So sometimes I'll really exaggerate the curves of something to make sure that it's clear what all sides of the hand are doing. So you wouldn't actually be able to see the fingers moving around it like that, but you get more of an idea of the shape of the hand and what the hand is actually doing.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. Grab some more paper.
Yeah, I was going to say the image that you just showed of the double page spread with the potter wheel and everything, that's an incredible perspective. Yeah, right. I was just thinking about how you've incorporated a viewpoint where we can see everything going on. So that is one of the important factors of being a picture book illustrator, is that because you're working on lots of illustrations that are showing a narrative through a story, you need to change up your viewpoints. So how would you tackle something like that? Where would you come from with that sort of image? I mean, there's like such a great viewpoint of every character who's in that room. So it's sort of like a fly on the ceiling, as they say, looking down.
Yeah, with this particular spread, it's the first spread aside from the one where he's kind of doodling in the book. But on this one, I really, because it's that introductory spread, I wanted it to, one, give the setting. So there's actually a great resource. There's a, now I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called the Shtetl Museum. Shtetl is a Jewish village in Eastern Europe, and they have a recreated Shtetl. I think it's actually in South Africa, but they have videos of it that you can look at online, and a lot of photographs. And so, really trying to get the idea of what kind of objects and things people would have in their house in a Shtetl. So I wanted that idea of setting, but I also wanted to make sure that you got that feeling of a family together creating things, because that's really how he described it. So yeah, I thought of it in terms of, you can see each of the characters is really one shape. And I thought about it in terms of a lot of the shapes were inspired by those Hebrew letters, particularly the dad. You can kind of see those overlapping calligraphic shapes. And then really just how all those different shapes interact with each other. So this one was really about getting that kind of overall perspective. And then for instance, this one, where the focus was on him doodling in these religious texts, I wanted to use this perspective, one where you can see inside the book and really the intensity of the shapes of the Hebrew calligraphy to be the focus. So there's just kind of that one swoosh, which looks a lot like a lot of these letters. That was kind of the inspiration for this.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely a lot of energy. It's very powerful, the storytelling through image that you create. Yeah, that's very effective and very successful. So you can see everybody, you know, how even here we've got like somebody big in the foreground, and there's still lots of detail in the with the people in the background. Yeah, great. And texture.
Yeah, so this one, again, it was the idea of he was standing up to his teacher, wanting them all to turn in someone who did something wrong. So again, it was about him being this figure that was kind of standing up for justice.
Yeah.
You can see kind of, again, how his shapes kind of reflect the Hebrew on the chalkboard there as well.
Yeah. Michelle, thank you for sending in your artwork. It looks wonderful. So thank you so much. Right. I'll be forwarding it to you, Evan. You can see some of our...
I can't wait to, yeah, absolutely send your artwork. I can't wait to
see the inspiration. It's right there. So, yeah.
I saw Red Panda. I'm going to attempt to draw a Red Panda. So
Malcolm answered a Red Panda this morning, so let's see what you do with that.
Maybe I should pull up Google. I don't know what a Red Panda looks like. I have drawn a Red Panda before, but again, like, I forget about it. All right. Oh, they're so cute. Okay.
So Kristen is asking, do you think you have a favorite color, or do you turn to a color often, a particular color? Yellow, for example.
In terms of my artwork, I'm going to draw as I talk, hopefully.
Yes.
I use a lot of kind of like bright red, orange, and yellow. I love warm, vibrant colors like that. And also the blue that I use in the People's Painter, I feel like I use that blue a lot in lots of different ways. Yes. I think I tend to go for contrast and really like intense colors. I always have fun thinking about, you know, I don't like to ever look at something and say like, oh, well, I know trees are green, so I'm going to draw it green. I try to look at something and say like, yes, it's green, but what kind of green? Is it a purplish green? Is it a yellowish green? And really try to push and amplify those colors. So yeah, I like all kinds of bright colors. And then as far as my favorite color, most of my clothes are blue. So I don't know, I have a lot of blue clothing. Probably because I have blue eyes, so I just always wear blue clothing.
Good in blue, yes. Blue is always a good color. Blue, yeah. Actually, Leia's asking if you could draw an Acclaimed, the Mexican salamander, and may not be pronouncing it quite correctly.
Oof. Wow, that is out of left field. All right, I will.
It's a crazy looking creature. It's amazing. She also
I vaguely know what it looks like, but I will have to use Google for that.
Yes, that's the one that you might need to use some reference. Well, maybe a garden eel, she said.
Or both.
Or both. Or, oh, Jan said, how about showing how you tilt someone's head? So we've got, you know, a few requests there. But
showing how, oh, like in a drawing, I'm assuming.
Yes, in a drawing. Yeah, cultivated a drawing, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. Wow. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, Malcolm, I want you to draw your version of the red panda and send it in.
Yeah, I would love to see your red panda.
Yeah,
that's pretty cute. All right.
That's pretty cute. Yeah.
We'll call that one good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
All right.
Are you enjoying your new set of well, are those like crayon sort of text? Are they wax?
Yes, so these are Caran d'Ache water soluble crayons.
Well, that's right, water soluble. So you could
show you a little bit. So this is bad paper to do this on, but so if I were to use this, it can turn into
oh yes, yes, yes.
A watercolor. Also.
Yeah.
So I use these a lot in the Storyteller and the artwork for that.
Ah, good to know.
So there we have our little red panda. All right, I've got the axolotl up.
Yes.
We'll see. I mean, they're goofy. I think there's a book out right now about a children's book.
Yes, there is. Yes, someone's got a book out.
All right. I like this goofy little smile that they have. So let's see if I can.
Yeah.
They kind of look like an emoji.
Yes, they certainly do.
There we go.
For you who might not know, this is a little aquatic salamander. They live and you know, that's where their world is, underwater. They almost look transparentish.
Kind of.
And they've got those cute little ear type things, right? Like look like little wings coming off there.
Yeah. I'm gonna attempt the layering that we did a little earlier, see if that will work for this little guy.
So much inspiration this morning. Thank you so much. Remember, Evan got up earlier than all of us who are on the East Coast, where we start our day for Saturday Stories at 10:30. He was off and ready earlier. So
sun is up now, so this kind of looks like a crazy clown, but we'll go with it.
Yes, well, yes. It can definitely be a character from the Cirque du Soleil. Well, lots of, you know, thank yous. Of course, you know, this has been so inspiring and so grateful that we will have it up for our YouTube channel so people can go back to it. I know I'm going to go have another look because I've got something half started here.
Yes, and please send anything that you do from this workshop. I would love to see everyone's.
Yes, yes. I will forward on a couple that I've already received. So thank you for getting those off to us nice and swiftly. Don't forget, because I know you'll get busy with the rest of your weekend. Just do it now. Don't be shy. Send us your artwork. Everyone has their own style. That's what I really love about art. So,
it's the weirdest thing I've ever drawn.
It is. Why you drove, you know, this came into, you know, your world this morning. There might be something that brews later.
Maybe.
You're doing an aquatic book.
All right, let's see, was there any other suggestions?
I just wanted to ask you, the Hello Moon book, did you say that was scheduled to be published for next year, 2022?
Yes, so that one will be out in fall of next year. So Color the Sky will be out in February, and then I don't know the actual release date yet for. And
who are the publishers for both of those? Little Brown was Hello Moon, right?
Little Brown is for Color the Sky, and then
for Color the Sky.
Athenaeum, Simon and Schuster is Hello Moon.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I think, you know, we've done so much. Oh, how about a dolphin? That's actually quite a good one, isn't it?
All right, let's see.
Is your favorite color is blue? You could incorporate some blue.
I'll do a blue. I am going to cheat on this too. I don't know what any of these animals look like in the moment. It's funny when I go on school visits and it'll be animals that I theoretically know what they look like, but then as soon as I am asked to draw, I mean, I don't think the kids mind, but they are very abstract versions of whatever these animals are.
Yeah, well,
okay. So let's.
Do you see dolphins out there?
Yes, actually. Well, the last few times I've gone to the beach, there have been dolphins from, like, you could see them from the shore.
Yes, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Although there was, I don't know if you saw the big oil spill that just.
Oh, I know. Terrible. Yes.
Happened.
When's that going to stop happening?
So hopefully the dolphins are doing okay and steering clear of the area.
Oh, look, Evan is so modest. Oh, he's not quite sure how to draw a dolphin. I think that is a very excellent dolphin.
Well, I am looking at pictures of dolphins right now. So.
That's a bottlenose dolphin, I believe.
It is.
Beautiful. Oh, yes, coming out of the spray. Fantastic.
I'll give him a Ben Shahn eye.
Ah, yeah. Yes. It looks like a dolphin with purpose.
Yes.
And of course, this crayon, the water soluble you're using, will be actually quite great for the water here. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun way to blend two different mediums by having the water soluble crayon.
Yeah.
It would be even better on watercolor paper, but
yeah. There you go, guys. I mean, look what you can create with shapes. Even, you know, if you don't use masking, you can just, you know, outline the shape of your character and then do texture for the background. for the setting that they're in. Let me see, do we have questions popping up? How do you keep all your drawings when you're building a book? Stacks of paper on the computer? Do you make drawings that never get used? That's
for a book, I don't usually have, excuse me, like final illustrations that don't get used. But I'll have a lot of sketches that, you know, were just the process of getting to that point with final art. And then usually I just have them, I have a flat file that I try to keep them in, but I feel like a lot of illustrators have this problem of there's never enough flat files, and they're very expensive to buy. So
yes,
if IKEA came out with a flat file, they would sell millions right there. But so yeah, so I just kind of store them all together like that. And now that I'm here, I kind of pack them up and send them out. Usually I would just
get into shows, obviously, you know, we'd have, you know, a gallery that would have all of Evan's artwork in a show, a single show. We got the collection because it's we're showing many illustrators from this year that were selected, but you know, once again, Evan was a medalist. That's a high honor, shows amazing skill, and gosh, we've been really treated to the behind the scenes today in your art studio. So I think if anyone has any more comments or anything, let's see. A workshop that's so inspiring, Dahlia says. Thank you so much, Dahlia. I agree. I totally agree. A big thank you. Thanks, Jan. So everybody, I know you're just busy working, so no pressure to write in the chat. Just do your artwork, send it in. And don't forget to check out the original art show if you can online. Oh, sorry, in person. We actually won't have the show up online because we are actually showing it in person. So you can, you know, get the book at the bookstore, or I think it'll be available in the libraries soon as well. And send Evan messages. You know, he's got a wonderful website. He's on Instagram. What else was I going to ask? Oh, yes. So for the book that you did, just very briefly, The Storyteller, maybe just to address what folks can do if they are traveling or going to places that are new to them, and how perhaps you get your inspiration going. And did you just bring sketchbooks, and how did you sort of get started with that? Because you knew you were going to Morocco to do the research, correct? You went specifically there to do it, or were you inspired more?
Both, actually. So the first time, whenever I go on a trip, I like to read as many books about a place that I'm going to, and you know, research the artwork, and try and learn as much as I can before I go. And so my husband and I were just going for a vacation, but I was kind of reading about about Moroccan culture, and one of the books that I read was called The Last Storytellers, and it was talking about this storytelling culture there that had been going on for 1,000 years, and how there were only a few master storytellers left. So that was kind of the inspiration for the book. And then as I was working on the book, it was over the process of a few years, I learned about a group of young Moroccans who were wanting to learn these stories and preserve them for themselves. So I went back to Morocco to meet some of them, and to meet one of the master storytellers and get to draw them and learn from them too. And I think one of the things that I enjoy doing is that when you are just out there drawing, people will come up and talk to you, and so you kind of get a window into things that you wouldn't normally get to see, just because I think drawing kind of puts you in a bit of a vulnerable place, in a way that taking a picture doesn't, because you can kind of take a picture and move on.
Yes.
But with a drawing, if you're sitting there, you're you're there for people to see. People will come and tell you their opinions on your artwork, positive and negative. But also it shows that
there's an interest,
right, and you're kind of open to talking. So on one of the trips to Morocco, I just kind of sat around and was drawing architecture, and then a group of kids came up, and each one of them wanted me to draw their portrait, so I drew all of their portraits and gave them out to them. And then one of the kids, actually, I think he was maybe 14 or something, he invited me over to his house to play video games. And his mom made us like a snack, and I was like, you don't have to do this. She's like, no, come in. And so we sat and played video games for a little while, and she made us a snack. It was the sweetest thing. But those are the kind of things that I feel like only happen because, like, if you're out there and, you know, being respectful somewhere and drawing, people want to, you know, share their lives with you.
Yes. Yeah, it opens doors for sure. Art opens doors, as does music. Yeah, wonderful. And it's a wonderful place for ceramics and tile work. I'm sure your husband.
Yeah, it's incredibly beautiful artwork there, and the people are also wonderful and friendly, and yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, so I hope as we sort of see the pandemic, hopefully, you know, ease off and everyone can get back to traveling, visiting family, and, you know, going to see other cultures. We can bear in mind as artists or budding artists that we can bring our sketchbooks and our little art materials. It's very transportable, actually, art materials. You don't have to bring too much to start drawing things and making notes. I'm sure we all have stories as well. So keep writing, keep illustrating, and join us again next month. And thank you so much, Evan, this morning. It has been an incredible treat having you. Very, very inspiring. I'm looking forward to seeing more artwork from our participants, and keep doing what you're doing. You really do the most magical books. You're an amazing illustrator, and can't wait to see all the new books coming out.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was great. So
yeah, the Society of Illustrators is very honored to have you. Thanks, Evan. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. And see you soon, Evan. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.